The rocks tore at her hands as she climbed. Blood mixed with dust, creating a dark paste that made every grip treacherous. Lieutenant Sarah "Ghost" Reynolds pressed her body flat against the cliff face, her breath coming in controlled bursts despite the screaming pain in her left shoulder. 3,000 feet below, headlamps swept the valley floor like predatory eyes, searching for prey. She was that prey. The radio crackled against her hip. She'd stolen it 40 minutes ago from the body of a man who'd once called her ma'am. Now his voice, Gunnery Sergeant Vic Romano, cut through the static with professional precision. Sector 7 clear, moving to 8. She's wounded. She can't have gone far. Another voice, younger, Corporal Martinez, the medic who'd laughed at her jokes just 2 days ago. Thermals picking up something near the North Ridge. Sarah's jaw clenched. The ceramic plate in her vest had saved her life when Vic's first shot caught her in the back. But the second round had found flesh, a through and through in her shoulder that bled steadily despite the field dressing she'd managed to tie one-handed. She kept climbing. She pressed her back against the cold stone and forced herself to think. 36 hours, that's all she had. 36 hours to reach safety, to expose the truth, to finish what her father had started 18 years ago. Her hands shook as she pulled out the small field notebook from her breast pocket. The pages were stained with Walsh's blood. CIA contractor James Walsh, who'd smiled at her 3 days ago during mission briefing, who'd told jokes about his daughter's soccer games, who'd tried to put a bullet in her brain 6 hours ago, before she'd cut his throat. The notebook contained 23 pages of coded coordinates, weapon cache locations, bank account numbers, names of CIA officials, the entire architecture of Operation Amber Serpent, a black budget program that had been funneling American weapons to Afghan warlords for the past 5 years. The same program her father had discovered in 1993. The same program that had killed him for knowing too much. Sarah looked down at the hunting party below. 12 men, former special operations, now contractors making 6 figures to tie up loose ends. She was a loose end. The only person alive who could identify the weapons shipments, who could testify to Congress, who could burn the entire operation to the ground. They'd sent her on this mission specifically to kill her in a way that looked like combat. Tragic accident. Female SEAL, so brave, killed by Taliban ambush. Her mother would get another folded flag. Another lie. But Sarah Reynolds had her father's instincts. The radio crackled again. A new voice this time. Accented English, but fluent. Professional. American woman. This is Commander Sharif. We know you are listening. The CIA has offered us $50,000 for your body. But I am a reasonable man. Surrender now, and I will make it quick. Taliban. Her own people had hired the Taliban to hunt her. Sarah unslung her Mk-18 carbine, weight 7.4 pounds, 30 rounds left in the magazine, 1 spare mag in her vest. Not enough. Not nearly enough for what was coming. But she'd make every shot count. 48 hours earlier. The briefing room at Forward Operating Base Sharana smelled like burnt coffee and male sweat. Sarah sat at the front table, her small frame dwarfed by the tactical maps spread across the surface. At 5'3" and 130 pounds, she'd spent her entire military career being underestimated. Usually, she preferred it that way. Lieutenant Reynolds, she looked up. Captain Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, holding a manila folder marked "Secret" in red letters. He was regular Army, logistics officer, the kind of career military man who did everything by the book and expected the same from everyone else. Sir, your team's being reassigned. High priority transport mission. Wheels up in 2 hours. Sarah stood accepting the folder. What's the package? CIA contractor. Name's James Walsh. He's been doing infrastructure assessment in Kandahar province. Needs secure transport back to Bagram for debrief and rotation home. She flipped through the file. Walsh's photo showed a man in his early 50s, graying hair, the kind of weathered face that came from too many years in too many bad places. His clearance level was redacted. His specific assignment was redacted. Even his previous duty stations were mostly redacted. "Why SEAL transport for a contractor movement?" she asked. Chen shrugged. "Above my pay grade, Lieutenant. Orders came down from Group. You're taking a fire team, 4 operators total. Route takes you through some contested areas, but intel says Taliban activity is minimal this week. Should be a milk run." Should be. Sarah had been in Afghanistan for 11 months. She'd learned that should be usually meant definitely won't be. "Who's on my team?" Chen consulted his tablet. "Gunnery Sergeant Vic Romano, MARSOC. Sergeant Kyle Kowalski, sniper qualified. Corporal Eddie Martinez, combat medic. All experienced operators. All men," she didn't say, but Chen caught the look in her eyes. "Problem, Lieutenant?" "No, sir." "Good. Because I don't need to tell you that some of these guys still have reservations about female SEALs in combat roles." Sarah's expression didn't change. "Then they can keep their reservations to themselves and do their jobs, sir." Chen almost smiled. "Dismissed, Lieutenant. And Reynolds?" "Sir? Your father was one of the best SEALs the Navy ever produced. I served with him briefly before Mogadishu." He paused. "He'd be proud of what you've accomplished." The words hit harder than she expected. Sarah managed a nod and left the briefing room before the captain could see the emotion in her face. Her father, Master Chief Jack Reynolds, SEAL Team 6, 23 years of service, killed in action October 3, 1993, during the Battle of Mogadishu. She'd been 9 years old, sitting in her 4th grade classroom when the principal had come to pull her out. The car ride home, her mother's face, the chaplain's gentle voice explaining that Daddy wasn't coming back from Africa. The funeral at Arlington had been full of men in dress uniforms, their faces carved from stone, none of them quite meeting her eyes. She'd held her mother's hand and stared at the flag-draped coffin and promised herself, right there in the Virginia rain, that she would finish what her father had started. She just hadn't known what that meant. Not then. The MRAP, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle, sat like a mechanical beast in the afternoon sun at the vehicle bay. 25 tons of armor, designed to survive IED blasts and small arms fire. Sarah did her pre-mission check, running her hands along the armored panels, checking sight lines from the gun turret. "Lieutenant," she turned. 3 men stood in formation, not quite at attention, but close enough. The one who'd spoken was built like a bulldog, 5'10", maybe 220, with a shaved head and a scar running from his left eyebrow to his jawline. His eyes were the color of concrete. "Gunnery Sergeant Vic Romano, ma'am. Force Recon, currently attached to MARSOC." His voice carried the flat accent of somewhere in the Midwest. "Ohio, maybe. This is Sergeant Kowalski and Corporal Martinez." Kowalski was tall and thin, almost gaunt, with the 1,000-yard stare of a man who'd spent too much time looking through a scope. He nodded once, but didn't speak. Martinez was younger, maybe 32, with the kind of easy smile that suggested he hadn't yet had it beaten out of him by the war. "Doc Martinez, ma'am," he said, extending a hand. "Looking forward to working with you." At least one of them had manners. Sarah shook his hand, then looked at Romano. "You've read the mission brief, Gunny?" "Yes, ma'am." The ma'am came out sounding like an insult. "Then you know we're on a timeline. Pick up at grid November Kilo 7325 at 1600 hours. Straight shot to Bagram, 215 clicks. ETA 2200 if we don't hit complications." "And if we do hit complications," Romano asked, "then we deal with them. I've run this route twice before. It's not a Sunday drive, but it's not the Korengal Valley either. Respectfully, ma'am, I've run this route 7 times. Romano's jaw was tight. "And I've been in this country for 3 tours while you've been here for what, 11 months? The challenge hung in the air. Sarah kept her voice level. "Gunny, I don't care if you've been here since the Soviet invasion. For the next 8 hours, I'm your team leader. You can have whatever opinions you want about female SEALs, or politics, or the state of the Navy, but you will execute your orders professionally, or you will be relieved. Clear? Romano's face reddened. Martinez suddenly found the ground fascinating. Kowalski's expression didn't change at all. "Crystal, ma'am," Romano finally said. "Good. Mount up. We roll in 15. The Afghan landscape rolled past in shades of brown and gray. Dust devils danced across the hardpan. In the distance, mountains rose like broken teeth against the sky. Sarah rode in the front passenger seat, her MK-18 across her lap. Romano drove, his hands steady on the wheel despite the tension that radiated from him like heat. Martinez manned the gun turret, scanning the ridgelines. Kowalski sat in back with their passenger. James Walsh looked exactly like his photo. Gray hair, weathered face, the kind of rumpled khaki clothing that contractors wore to blend in. He'd been quiet since they'd picked him up, content to stare out the armored window at the passing terrain. "Mr. Walsh," Sarah said, turning in her seat, "your debrief at Bagram, is it time-sensitive?" Walsh looked at her with eyes that were very blue and very cold. "Everything's time-sensitive in this country, Lieutenant. Why do you ask?" "Just making conversation. How long have you been doing infrastructure assessment?" 6 years, give or take. "That's a long time in Afghanistan. Some of us like it here." Walsh smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The work is important. Building roads, power plants, water systems, helping the people rebuild." Sarah nodded, but something in her gut twisted. Walsh didn't look like an infrastructure contractor. He looked like someone who'd spent time doing things that didn't go in official reports. The way he sat, weight balanced, ready to move, the calluses on his hands, the faint outline of a shoulder holster under his jacket. Her father had taught her to read people, to trust her instincts. Her instincts were screaming. She pulled out her tablet and called up Walsh's file again. Most of it was still redacted, but there were fragments. Previous assignments in South America, Eastern Europe, places where the CIA ran operations that Congress pretended not to know about. "Problem, Lieutenant?" Walsh asked. "Just reviewing the route," she lied. The MRAP hit a pothole, jolting everyone. Romano cursed under his breath. Outside, the sun was starting its descent toward the western peaks, turning the sky the color of blood. Sarah activated her radio. "Overwatch, this is Shadow 1, requesting traffic update on Route Tampa." Static then. "Shadow 1, Overwatch, route is clear. No reported activity in your sector." "Copy, Overwatch." She settled back in her seat, but the tension in her shoulders wouldn't ease. Something was wrong. She could feel it the way her father had described feeling it in Mogadishu. That electric charge in the air before everything went to hell. Behind her, she heard a faint electronic chirp. Walsh was holding his phone, but he'd angled it away from view. His thumb moved across the screen. Quick, practiced. Who the hell had cell service out here? Sarah's hand drifted toward her sidearm. "Mr. Walsh, we have a no electronics policy during transport. Operational security." Walsh looked up, surprised. "Of course, Lieutenant. My apologies." He powered down the phone and tucked it away, but not before Sarah caught a glimpse of the screen. GPS coordinates, being transmitted somewhere. Her blood went cold. "Gunny," she said quietly. "Increase speed, now." Romano glanced at her. "Ma'am?" "Do it." The MRAP accelerated. Martinez called down from the turret. "Everything okay?" Before Sarah could answer, the world exploded. The IED detonated 50 meters ahead, erupting in a column of fire and debris. Romano slammed the brakes. The MRAP's anti-lock system screamed. They fishtailed, armor scraping against rock. "Contact front," Martinez yelled. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the road. Not the wild spray of insurgents. Controlled, professional, 3-round bursts. Sarah's mind processed it in fractions of a second. L-shaped ambush. Classic special operations tactic. Attackers positioned on the high ground with overlapping fields of fire. This wasn't Taliban. "Return fire," she ordered. "Kowalski, get me eyes on those shooters." The sniper was already moving, breaking open the rear door, taking position. His rifle, an M40A6, came up smooth. Professional. Sarah grabbed her MK-18 and joined Martinez at the turret. Muzzle flashes sparked from the ridgeline, maybe 200 meters out. She aimed, breathed, fired. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Controller pairs, just like her father had taught her on the ranch in Montana all those years ago. A figure dropped from the rocks. "One down," Martinez called. But there were more, at least 8 shooters, maybe 10. And their weapons. Sarah's blood froze as she caught sight of one through her ACOG scope. M4 carbine, American issue. The shooter was wearing civilian clothes, but his movements were military. Former special operations probably, the kind of men who took contractor jobs because they couldn't leave the war. "Gunny, we need to move. Reverse and find cover." Romano threw the MRAP into reverse. Bullets sparked off the armor. One round spiderwebbed the windshield but didn't penetrate. They backed into a dried riverbed, using the natural depression for cover. Sarah's mind raced. This wasn't a random ambush. This was planned, precise. And Walsh had sent their position right before it happened. She spun toward the back of the vehicle. Walsh had a pistol in his hand, a Sig Sauer P226, the same model Sarah carried. "Lieutenant," he said calmly, "I'm sorry. You seem like a decent person, but you're a complication that needs to be resolved." The gun rose toward her face. Sarah's body moved on pure instinct. She dove left as the shot cracked past her ear. Her elbow caught Martinez in the gut as she fell, and the medic tumbled from the turret, gasping. Romano twisted in his seat, reaching for his own weapon. Walsh fired again, but Kowalski was faster. The sniper's body jerked as he threw himself between Sarah and the bullet. The round caught him in the upper chest, punching through lung tissue. Blood sprayed across the MRAP's interior. "Reaper!" Martinez screamed. Sarah rolled, came up with her SIG drawn, and put 2 rounds into Walsh's center mass before he could fire again. The contractor fell back, his weapon clattering to the floor. For 3 seconds, there was only the sound of Kowalski's wet, struggling breaths. Then the world came back in a rush. Martinez was on Kowalski, tearing open his trauma kit, hands already slick with blood. "Stay with me, brother. Stay with me." Romano had his rifle up, covering the outside. "We got shooters moving in. Maybe 90 seconds before they're on us." Sarah grabbed Walsh by his collar and dragged him up. Blood soaked his shirt, but he was still conscious, still alive. "Why?" she demanded. Walsh coughed, smiled, blood on his teeth. "You weren't supposed to figure it out, Ghost. This whole mission was to eliminate you. You're the only one who can ID the weapons shipments from Operation Amber Serpent." The name meant nothing to her. "What the hell is Amber Serpent?" "Your father knew, and he was going to expose it before Mogadishu." Walsh's breathing was becoming labored. "We made sure he didn't come back." The words took a moment to process. Then they hit like a physical blow. "What did you say?" "Mogadishu wasn't an accident. Your father discovered the weapons sales. Black budget program. Billions of dollars going to warlords. He was going to go public." Walsh coughed again. "So we arranged his death. Made it look like heroic sacrifice." Sarah's hands shook. Her father. Her father hadn't died fighting for his country. He'd been murdered for trying to save it. "Who gave the order?" Her voice was a whisper. "Does it matter? He's dead. You're about to be dead. Operation Amber Serpent continues." Walsh's eyes were starting to glaze. Those men outside, they're contractors, professionals. They've been paid $500,000 to make sure you don't leave Afghanistan alive. "Why me? I don't know anything about—" "Because you have your father's eyes, Lieutenant. You see things. Notice patterns. Last month, you ran a weapons cache inspection in Kandahar province. Do you remember? She did. Standard operation. They'd cataloged serial numbers on captured weapons. Routine paperwork. Those serial numbers matched a shipment that was supposed to go to the Afghan National Army, but it went to a warlord instead. You filed the report. Someone in intelligence flagged it. Realized you could trace the entire supply chain if you looked close enough. Walsh's smile was terrible. So they decided you were a problem. The gunfire outside intensified. Romano fired back, his rifle on full automatic now. They're flanking. We got maybe 60 seconds. Martinez looked up from Kowalski, his face stricken. He's gone, ma'am. Reaper's gone. Sarah stared at Kowalski's body. The sniper who'd taken a bullet meant for her. A man she'd known for less than 4 hours. Dead because of her. Dead because of secrets and lies and operations that shouldn't exist. Walsh's hand moved weakly towards something on his belt. A radio. Sarah stepped on his wrist. Who else is compromised? Who else is in on this? Walsh laughed, blood bubbling from his lips. Everyone, Lieutenant. The whole system. You think it's just me? The CIA? The contractors? Even some of your team? Sarah's head snapped toward Romano. The gunnery sergeant was focused on the approaching shooters, but something in his posture had changed. A subtle tension. Gunny, she said slowly. You knew. Romano didn't turn around. Lieutenant, we need to move. Now. You knew. Sarah, it was the first time he'd used her name. I got a family, 3 kids. They offered me $500,000 to make sure this mission went bad. To make sure you didn't come home. I'm sorry, but that's college tuition. That's my daughter's wedding. That's my wife not having to worry when I'm gone. And Reaper? Collateral damage. Wrong place, wrong time. Martinez was staring at Romano like he'd never seen him before. Vic, what the fuck, man? Doc, you can walk away from this too. They'll pay you. They'll kill us, Martinez said flatly. All of us. You think they're leaving witnesses? Sarah's mind was racing. Walsh dying on the floor. Kowalski dead. Romano compromised. Martinez may be loyal, maybe not. And outside, a team of professional killers closing in. She made her decision in half a second. Her K-bar knife came out of its sheath in one smooth motion. The blade, 7 inches of 1095 carbon steel, the same knife her father had carried, caught the light as it moved. She drove it into Walsh's throat before he could key his radio. The contractor's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. Sarah held the blade steady until his body went slack. Then she turned toward Romano. The gunnery sergeant had his rifle pointed at her. So did Martinez, pointed at Romano. Mexican standoff in a metal box, while death closed in from outside. Put it down, Gunny, Sarah said quietly. Can't do that, ma'am. You were special operations. You took an oath. I also took a mortgage, and you're not walking out of this valley. The gunfire outside had stopped. An eerie silence fell. Then a voice called out in perfect English. Lieutenant Reynolds, this is your last chance. Send out the package and we let you walk. Sarah pulled Walsh's notebook from his vest. The blood-soaked pages contained everything. Coordinates, bank accounts, names, evidence that would destroy careers, maybe end a covert war, get her killed. She looked at Romano. You have 3 seconds to decide what kind of man you are, Gunny. I already decided. Then so have I. Sarah grabbed 2 flashbang grenades from her vest. She pulled both pins, kicked open the MRAP's rear door, and threw them as hard as she could toward the voices outside. Then she grabbed Kowalski's rifle, Walsh's laptop and notebook, and jumped. The flashbangs detonated with twin thunderclaps of sound and light. Sarah hit the ground running, sprinting for the rocky outcropping 30 meters away. Bullets chased her, kicking up dust. Behind her, she heard Romano screaming orders. Don't let her get away! Take her down! She reached the rocks as Romano's rifle opened up. The round sparked off stone inches from her head. Sarah rolled, came up, and fired 3 shots back at the MRAP. Not trying to kill, just suppress. Then she was over the rocks and running into the darkness of the wadi beyond. Behind her, voices shouted. Radios crackled. An engine roared to life. Sarah Reynolds ran like her father had taught her. Smooth, efficient, saving energy for the long haul. Because this wasn't a sprint. This was a marathon. 36 hours to reach someone she could trust. 36 hours to expose the truth. 36 hours to finish what her father had started 18 years ago. The stars came out above the Hindu Kush as she ran. Constant, unchanging. Navigate by them, Master Chief Jack Reynolds had once told his daughter. So she would, even if it killed her. The wadi stretched before her like a scar carved into the earth. Sarah's boots found purchase on loose scree, each step calculated, controlled. Behind her, the voices of men who wanted her dead echoed off canyon walls. She'd been running for 40 minutes. Her lungs burned. The wound in her shoulder had reopened, blood soaking through the hasty field dressing she'd tied with her teeth in one good hand. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. The stolen radio on her hip crackled with Romano's voice. All units, target is on foot, heading northwest into the wadi system. She's wounded, carrying approximately 40 pounds of gear. She cannot maintain this pace. Spread out and cut off the northern exits. Sarah pressed herself against a boulder, breathing through her nose, forcing her heart rate down. She'd learned this in BUD/S, Hell Week, when exhaustion became a living thing that tried to drag you under. The instructors had called it embracing the suck. Her father had called it finding your center in the storm. She found it now. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking her loadout. MK-18 carbine, 7.4 pounds, 27 rounds remaining in the current magazine, 1 spare. Sig Sauer P226, 15 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. Kowalski's M40A6 sniper rifle strapped across her back, heavy but invaluable. 3 magazines for the rifle, 14 rounds total. Not enough for a sustained firefight, but enough for precision work. And Sarah Reynolds was very good at precision work. He'd been about to blow the whistle, so they'd sent him to Mogadishu and made sure he didn't come back. The rage that filled Sarah's chest was cold and pure. She welcomed it, fed on it. Rage could keep you moving when exhaustion said stop. Her instructors at BUD/S had warned against emotion in combat, but her father had taught her different. Use the fire ghost, he'd told her during a hunting trip when she was 16. They'd been tracking a wounded elk through Montana timber, and she'd been furious at herself for the bad shot that had caused its suffering. Don't let it use you. Channel it. Make it fuel. She channeled it now. The radio crackled again. A different voice this time. Younger. Professional. Romano, this is Havoc 2. We've got thermal imaging sweeping the northern sectors. No hits yet, but we're picking up residual heat signatures in the main wadi. She came through here within the last 30 minutes. Copy, Havoc 2. Tighten the net. I want eyes on her within the hour. Sarah smiled without humor. They thought they were hunting her. They had numbers, technology, training. 12 contractors, all former special operations. Delta Force, Rangers, SEALs. Men who'd spent careers becoming predators. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd trained with her father. And Jack Reynolds had taught his daughter things that never made it into the manuals. She moved deeper into the wadi, away from the obvious routes. The canyon branched into smaller tributaries, ancient water channels carved by flash floods that came once or twice a year. Most were dead ends, but one, if her map reading was correct, would take her up to a ridgeline that overlooked the entire valley. High ground, the sniper's advantage. The climb took 20 minutes. Every meter was agony. Her shoulder screamed. Her hands, torn and bleeding from the earlier cliff face, left red smears on the rock. But she made no sound. SEALs trained in surf torture, in ice-cold water that made your bones ache. Pain was just information. You acknowledged it and moved on. She reached the ridgeline as the moon rose higher, painting the valley in shades of silver and black. Below, she could see headlamps moving in a search pattern. Professional, methodical. They were good. But Sarah had something they didn't. She had nothing left to lose. She unslung Kowalski's rifle and set it up on a flat rock, checking the scope. The M40A6 was a beautiful weapon, a Marine Corps precision instrument capable of taking a life at 1,000 meters. The scope was a Schmidt Bender 3 to 12 times 50, high-end glass that gathered light like a lens gathering souls. Sarah pressed her eye to it and found her first target. 820 meters down the valley, a man in tactical gear was scanning the ridgeline with night vision goggles. He was positioned poorly, silhouetted against a lighter patch of rock, stationary, presenting a stable target. Sarah's breathing slowed. The night sky above Afghanistan held more stars than seemed possible. Her father had told her once, during a camping trip in Montana when she was 8 years old, that the best hunters could track by starlight alone. He taught her to read the night sky like a map, Polaris for true north, Orion's belt for east-west orientation. When everything else fails, Ghost, he'd said, the stars won't lie to you. She used that knowledge now, used it to steady herself, to find her center. She calculated in her head, 820 meters, temperature approximately 60 degrees, altitude 6,800 feet, less air density, less bullet drop. Wind maybe 5 miles per hour from the east, quartering. The bullet would drift approximately 8 inches right. She dialed in the correction. 17.3 minutes of angle elevation. 2 clicks right for windage. Then she waited. Patience was the sniper's virtue. You could have perfect position, perfect conditions, perfect calculation, but if you took the shot when your heart was beating too hard, when your muscles were tense, you'd miss. Sarah breathed, in through the nose, filling the diaphragm, out through the mouth, letting the tension drain. In, out, in. Her heart rate dropped below 60. The rifle settled into the pocket of her shoulder like it belonged there. The crosshairs steadied on the man's chest. Out. Between heartbeats, in the space where everything stopped, she pressed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The suppressor, Kowalski had fitted a military-grade can, reduced the muzzle blast to a cough that wouldn't carry more than 50 meters. 800 meters away, the man collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Sarah was already moving. A good sniper never took more than one shot from a single position. She'd learned that from the Marine Scout sniper instructor at Quantico, a grizzled gunnery sergeant who'd killed 47 enemy combatants in Fallujah. She low-crawled 30 meters to a new position and set up again. Below, the headlamps were converging on the fallen man's position. She heard shouting, confusion. They'd expected to be hunting a desperate woman running for her life. They hadn't expected to be hunted in return. The radio on her hip exploded with chatter. Man down! Man down! Havoc 6 is hit. Where'd the shot come from? I don't know. Thermal's not picking up anything. She's got a rifle, long gun, probably taken from the MRAP. Romano's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone, calm down. She's one shooter with limited ammo. We're 12. Spread out, use cover, and flush her toward the northern end. Havoc 2, get that thermal drone airborne. I want eyes in the sky in 5 minutes. Sarah's jaw tightened. A thermal drone would spot her body heat signature within minutes. She needed to move. But more than that, she needed to reduce their numbers while she had the advantage of darkness and surprise. 2 more shots. That's all she could risk before relocating. She scanned the valley through the scope, looking for targets of opportunity. The contractors had gone to ground now, using boulders and depressions for cover. Smart, professional, but everyone made mistakes. There, a man was moving between cover positions, trying to get a better angle on the ridgeline where they thought she was. He was fast, athletic, using proper bounding techniques, but he'd chosen his route poorly. For exactly 2 seconds, he'd be exposed in a gap between 2 boulders. Sarah tracked him, led the movement, calculated. The range was less this time, 600 meters. Wind negligible. Bullet drop 12.4 minutes of angle. She adjusted. The man appeared in the gap. She fired. The bullet caught him in the upper chest, just below the ceramic plate of his body armor. He went down hard, his rifle clattering on stone. "Contact! She's on the western ridge!" Muzzle flashes erupted from below. Bullets snapped past Sarah's position, sparking off rocks. She rolled away, keeping low, as rounds chewed up her previous firing position. Time to move. She grabbed the rifle and ran in a low crouch along the ridgeline, putting distance between herself and the contact point. Behind her, she could hear the distinct thump, thump, thump of a drone launching. The sound grew louder, then faded as it gained altitude. 60 seconds until it was overhead, maybe 90 if she was lucky. Sarah dropped over the far side of the ridge, sliding down a steep scree slope in a barely controlled descent. Rocks tumbled with her, clattering down the mountainside. She hit the bottom hard, rolled, came up running. The terrain here was different. More vegetation, scrub brush and stunted trees that had somehow found purchase in this harsh landscape. She pushed through them, ignoring the branches that tore at her face and gear. A cave mouth appeared in the gloom, just a dark hollow in the rock face, maybe 8 feet wide and twice that deep. Not much, but it would mask her thermal signature. She ducked inside, pressing her back against cold stone, and listened. The drone's electric motors hummed overhead, growing louder, then fading. Searching. She'd bought herself time, but not much. They'd realize she'd gone to ground, and then they'd start clearing caves systematically. Sarah pulled out the radio and cycled through frequencies, looking for anything useful. Most channels were encrypted military nets she couldn't access. But on a Taliban frequency, ironically unencrypted because the insurgents didn't trust technology, she heard voices speaking Pashto. Her language skills were basic, but she caught enough to understand. They were talking about the Americans fighting in the valley, about the reward that had been offered, about the woman who was hunted. And then one voice said something that made her blood run cold. "Commander Sharif says $50,000 for the American woman, but he also says the CIA men are our enemies too. Perhaps we kill them all and take their weapons." Sarah's mind raced. The Taliban had been hired to hunt her, but they were considering turning on their employers. In Afghanistan, loyalty was always negotiable. An idea began to form. Crazy, desperate, the kind of thing that would get her court-martialed if she survived. But survival was all that mattered now. She keyed the radio to the Taliban frequency and spoke in her rough Pashto. "Commander Sharif, this is the American woman. I wish to speak with you." Silence. Then a cultured voice responded in perfect English. "So the ghost speaks. You have courage, American, or perhaps you are simply desperate." "Both," Sarah admitted. "You've been hired to kill me, but I can offer you something better than CIA money." "Oh? And what could you possibly offer that would be worth $50,000? "The location of every weapons cache that the CIA has sold to warlords in your country for the past 5 years. American rifles, mortars, explosives, enough firepower to equip an army." Another pause, longer this time. "Why would you betray your own country?" "I'm not betraying my country. I'm betraying the men who betrayed it first. The CIA has been running an illegal arms dealing operation called Amber Serpent. They've sold billions of dollars of weapons to criminals and warlords. Some of those weapons have killed American soldiers. All of those weapons have killed Afghan civilians. And you have proof of this? Sarah held up Walsh's blood-stained notebook, though Sharif couldn't see it. Grid coordinates for 23 weapon caches, bank accounts, names of CIA officials, everything you need to expose the program. And in exchange, safe passage through your territory. And information. I need to know where the contractors have positioned their forces. You asked me to betray men who have paid me. I'm asking you to side with justice instead of money. The CIA killed my father in 1993 because he tried to expose an earlier version of this program. They're trying to kill me for the same reason. The men hunting me aren't patriots. They're mercenaries protecting a criminal conspiracy. The silence stretched so long that Sarah thought Sharif had simply walked away. Then, there is a shepherd's hut 2 kilometers north of your current position. Grid November Kilo 7482. Be there in 1 hour. Come alone. If this is a trap, you will die very slowly. The radio went dead. Sarah stared at it for a long moment. She just agreed to meet with a Taliban commander, by herself, in the middle of hostile territory, while being hunted by American contractors. Her father would have been horrified, or maybe he would have understood. Jack Reynolds had always said that honor mattered more than rules, that sometimes you had to break the small laws to uphold the bigger ones. She checked her watch. 0147 hours. She had 60 minutes to cover 2 kilometers of rough terrain while avoiding a dozen professional killers and a thermal imaging drone. She'd faced worse odds during Hell Week. Barely. Sarah moved out of the cave and into the night. The moon was higher now, providing enough light to navigate without night vision. She moved fast, using the low ground, avoiding ridgelines where she'd be silhouetted. Every 50 meters she stopped, listened, checked her 6. The contractors were still sweeping the area where she'd taken her shots. She could hear their radios, see the occasional flash of headlamps. They were being methodical, professional, but they were also looking for a woman on the run, not a woman who'd agreed to meet the enemy. The terrain rose gradually, transitioning from wadi to scrubland to the lower slopes of the mountains. Sarah's legs burned with the altitude and exertion. The wound in her shoulder was a constant throb of pain that she'd learned to tune out. Pain was temporary, death was permanent. At 0230 hours, she spotted the hut. It was exactly what Sharif had said, a stone structure used by shepherds during summer months, maybe 12 feet square, with a roof that had partially collapsed. No lights, no visible guards. Every instinct Sarah had screamed, trap. She circled wide, using the available cover, watching for any sign of an ambush. The thermal drone was still somewhere overhead. She could hear it occasionally, but it was focused on the valley below, not the mountains above. After 10 minutes of observation, she saw movement. A man stepped out of the hut. He was tall, wearing the traditional Afghan pakol hat and a long coat despite the warmth. His beard was gray, his face weathered by decades of sun and war. He carried an AK-47, but it was slung across his back, not held ready. He looked directly at Sarah's position, though there was no way he should have been able to see her in the darkness. "Lieutenant Reynolds," he called in English, "I am Commander Sharif. I give you my word, under God, that I mean you no harm this night. Please, come, let us talk as civilized people." Sarah weighed her options. She could run, try to make it to Bagram alone, across 200 kilometers of hostile territory with a dozen contractors hunting her. Or she could take the chance that a Taliban commander's word was worth more than a CIA contractor's. She stood up and walked toward the hut, her rifle held at a ready position but not aimed. Sharif watched her approach with eyes that were very dark and very sharp. Up close, Sarah could see he was older than she'd first thought. Mid-50s at least. Old enough to have fought the Soviets. Old enough to have seen empires come and go. You are very small, he observed, to have killed two of the CIA's men. Size doesn't matter much at 800 meters. Sharif's mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile. No, I suppose it does not. He gestured to the hut. Please, I have tea. Sarah followed him inside, every sense alert for betrayal. But the hut contained only two men, Sharif and a younger fighter who kept his hands visible and away from his weapon. A small fire burned in the center of the space. A kettle sat on stones beside it. Sharif poured tea into two chipped cups and offered one to Sarah. She took it but didn't drink. You do not trust me, Sharif said. You're Taliban. I'm American military. Trust seems optimistic. Yet you are here because the men hunting me are worse than you are. Sharif nodded slowly. I understand. I too have been betrayed by allies who were supposed to be brothers. He sipped his tea. Did you know I studied engineering at Cornell University? Class of 1989. I wanted to build bridges, hospitals, schools. Then the Soviets invaded my country, and I learned that sometimes you must destroy before you can build. And now you fight Americans. Now I fight anyone who treats Afghanistan as a playground for their empires. His eyes were hard. The Soviets came to bring us communism. The Americans came to bring us democracy. But both of you just brought death and took our resources. You are not so different. Sarah couldn't argue with that. Not after what she'd learned about Operation Amber Serpent. The notebook, Sharif said. May I see it? Sarah pulled out Walsh's blood-stained field book and handed it over. Sharif studied the pages carefully, his expression growing darker with each one he read. These coordinates, he said quietly, this cache here, grid November 7, 321, that is near my village. 3 months ago, a warlord named Hekmat Khan attacked us with American weapons. New weapons. Still in their packing grease. 23 people died. 12 of them were children. His hands shook slightly as he turned the pages. This cache here, and this one, and this one, all sold to men who rape and murder and call it war. Your CIA armed them, paid them, protected them. He looked up at Sarah. And your father tried to stop this? Yes. In 1993, he discovered an early version of the program. He was going to testify to Congress. They sent him to Mogadishu and made sure he never came back. Then your father was a man of honor. Sharif closed the notebook and handed it back. Such men are rare in any country. Will you help me? Sharif stared into the fire for a long moment. Do you know what the Americans call me, Lieutenant? The Butcher of Kandahar. They say I am a terrorist, a monster. But do you know what I was doing when your planes bombed my village in 2003? I was teaching mathematics to girls. In secret because the Taliban, the real Taliban, not the CIA's hired pretend Taliban, would have killed me for it. He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. I do not hate Americans, Lieutenant Reynolds. I hate empires. I hate men who treat human lives as currency. And I hate the CIA for what they have done to my country. He paused. So yes, I will help you. Not because I am your ally, but because we share a common enemy. What do you need from me? I need you to promise that this notebook reaches people who will use it, that the truth will be told, that the men responsible will face justice. I promise, even if it means sacrificing yourself. Sarah thought of her father, of Kowalski, who died taking a bullet meant for her, of every soldier who died because corrupt officials had armed their enemies. Even if it means that. Sharif nodded. Then I will give you what you need. The contractors have established a command post 3 kilometers south of here. They have 10 men now. You killed 2, so 10 remain. They have night vision, thermal imaging, and a drone. But they are arrogant. They think they are hunting a scared woman running for her life. What would you do? I would teach them to fear the dark. Sarah felt something cold and purposeful settle in her chest. I need equipment, and I need to know their positions. Sharif smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I think, Lieutenant Reynolds, that you and I are going to be very good friends. For the next 36 hours, at least. He turned to his young fighter and spoke rapid Pashto. The man nodded and left the hut. Tell me, Sharif said, how many more of them do you need to kill before you can escape? Sarah thought about it, calculated the odds, the distance to Bagram, the resources she'd need. All of them, she said quietly. Sharif laughed, a deep, genuine sound that echoed off the stone walls. Yes, I think perhaps you are your father's daughter after all. Over the next 20 minutes, Sharif's fighter returned with equipment. An AK-47 with 4 magazines, a tactical vest, water, food, and a battered smartphone with a satellite uplink. The phone has 30 minutes of talk time, Sharif explained. The battery is weak. Use it wisely. I need to upload the contents of this notebook to the internet, to news organizations, to people who can't be silenced. That will take more bandwidth than the phone can provide. But there is a way. Sharif pulled out a hand-drawn map. 8 kilometers north of here, there is an old Soviet communications station. Abandoned since 1989, but the satellite dish still stands. If you can reach it, and if the equipment still functions, you might be able to use it. Sarah studied the map. 8 kilometers, through territory controlled by the contractors, while wounded, while hunted. What about them? She gestured toward the valley where the contractors searched. Leave them to me. My men and I will create a distraction. It will give you time to move north. They're professionals. They'll kill your people. Perhaps, but we have been killing Russians and Americans and each other for 40 years, Lieutenant. We know how to die. The question is, do you know how to live? Sarah met his eyes. I'm still here, aren't I? You are. Sharif stood. Go now. Head north. Stay in the low ground until you are past the contractor positions, then climb to the ridgeline. From there, you can see the communication station. It will take you perhaps 3 hours if you are fast. What about you? I am going to give the CIA men a lesson in hospitality, Afghan style. Sarah started to thank him, then stopped. What do you say to a Taliban commander who was helping you betray American contractors? The entire situation was so far outside normal that words seemed inadequate. Sharif seemed to understand. Your father would have done the same. He knew that honor is not about flags or uniforms. It is about doing what is right, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. How do you know about my father? Because I was in Mogadishu in 1993. I was there with the Somali militias, training them. I saw the Black Hawk go down. I saw your father and his men fight their way through 8 blocks of hostiles to rescue the Rangers. And I saw him die. Sharif's expression was grave. He could have run. His team wanted to run, but he stayed to carry a wounded Ranger to safety. He took 3 bullets doing it. The last thing he said was, got him out. That's the job. Tears stung Sarah's eyes. You were there. I was, and I have carried the memory of his courage for 18 years. I did not know he had a daughter until tonight, but now I understand why you fight. He placed a hand on her shoulder, carefully avoiding her wound. Go, honor your father, finish what he started. Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She gathered her gear and moved to the door. Behind her, Sharif spoke one more time. Lieutenant Reynolds, when you upload that notebook, when you expose the truth, it will destroy you as well. You know this, yes? I know. And you go anyway? Yes. Then you truly are Jack Reynolds' daughter. Go with God, Ghost. Sarah stepped out into the Afghan night. The temperature had dropped, the air thin and clean at this altitude. Behind her, gunfire crackled as Sharif's distraction began. She had minutes, not hours. She oriented herself north and started moving. Behind her, she heard the first crack of gunfire as Sharif and his men engaged the contractors. The distraction had begun. Sarah ran through the darkness, her father's knife at her belt, his lessons in her heart, his unfinished mission driving her forward. She'd killed 2 of them. 10 remained. And somewhere ahead, an abandoned Soviet communications station waited with the power to expose the truth. 8 kilometers, 3 hours. A race against time and death. The hunt was far from over. But Sarah Reynolds was done being prey. Now came the reckoning. The Soviet communications station rose from the mountainside like a steel skeleton, its massive satellite dish pointed at stars that had witnessed empires rise and fall. Sarah crouched in the rocks 200 meters away, studying the structure through Kowalski's rifle scope. The facility was smaller than she'd expected, a single concrete building, maybe 30 feet square, with the dish mounted on a rusted tower that climbed another 40 feet into the night sky. The Soviets had built it in the early 1980s to coordinate their occupation forces. Now it was a monument to failure, abandoned to the wind and time. But the dish still stood. And if Sharif was right, some of the equipment inside might still function. Sarah checked her watch. 0447 hours. She'd made the 8-kilometer trek in 2 hours and 30 minutes, moving fast through terrain that wanted to kill her. Her shoulder was bleeding again. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. She'd finished the last of her water an hour ago, and thirst had begun its clawing work on her concentration. But she was here, and she was still alive. Behind her, maybe 4 kilometers south, she could still hear sporadic gunfire. Sharif's distraction was holding. The contractors had taken the bait, engaging what they thought was a Taliban force. They didn't know Sarah had already slipped past them, moving through the darkness like the ghost her call sign promised. She'd heard Romano's voice on the stolen radio, tight with frustration. "Break contact! She's not here! The Taliban are just covering for her!" Too late, Gunny. Too late by miles. Sarah studied the approach to the communications station. Open ground for the last 100 meters. No cover, completely exposed. If anyone was watching, she'd be a perfect target. But the building showed no signs of occupation. No lights, no movement, no heat signatures visible through her thermal scope. She made her decision and moved. The sprint across open ground took 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Every step she expected the crack of a rifle, the punch of a bullet. But she reached the concrete wall without incident and pressed her back against it, breathing hard. The metal door hung crooked on its hinges, corroded by decades of weather. Sarah pushed it open slowly, the hinges screaming in protest. She winced at the sound, but there was no help for it. Inside the facility was a time capsule of Soviet engineering. Ancient computer consoles lined one wall, their screens dark and dead. Cable bundles snaked across the floor. In the center of the room stood the main communications array, a massive piece of equipment that looked like something from a Cold War museum. And in the corner, almost hidden behind fallen debris, sat a newer piece of equipment. A satellite uplink terminal, maybe 10 years old, with solar panels folded against its side. Someone had been here recently, maintaining the station, keeping it functional. Sarah moved to the terminal and ran her hands over its surface. Dust, but not thick. The solar panels were clean. She flipped them open, angled them toward the door where moonlight could reach, and pressed the power button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, held it down, whispered a prayer to God she didn't believe in. A green LED flickered to life. The screen glowed. Text scrolled past in Pashto, then English. System initializing solar charge, 23%. Satellite acquisition in progress. Sarah could have wept with relief. She pulled out Walsh's laptop, recovered from the MRAP, password protected, but she'd watched him type it during the drive. She connected it to the terminal with a cable from her pack and waited while the satellite lock established. 3 minutes, the longest 3 minutes of her life. Then, connection established. Sarah's hands flew across the keyboard. She uploaded the contents of Walsh's notebook, every page photographed on the smartphone Sharif had given her. 23 pages of evidence, bank accounts, coordinates, names of CIA officials, the entire architecture of Operation Amber Serpent. She sent it to every major news organization she could think of. The New York Times, Washington Post, Reuters, The Guardian, Al Jazeera. She sent it to 3 different congressional oversight committees. She sent it to the Inspector General's office at the Department of Defense. And she sent it to her father's old commanding officer, Admiral James Morrison, now retired, the only flag officer Jack Reynolds had trusted completely. The upload bar crept forward with agonizing slowness. 18%, 31%, 47%. The radio on her hip crackled. Romano's voice, different now, calmer, more dangerous. "Ghost, I know you can hear me. We found the Taliban position. Sharif's dead. So are 6 of his men. We're coming for you now, and we know where you're going." That old Soviet station is the only place with satellite capability in a 50-kilometer radius. Sarah kept her eyes on the upload bar. 63%, 71%. You can't win this, Sarah. Even if you upload that data, you're still in Afghanistan with no backup and no extraction. You're wounded, you're exhausted, and you've got 10 very angry professionals heading your way. A pause. "Surrender now, and I'll make it quick. You have my word." 84%, 92%. Your father would want you to live, Sarah. He wouldn't want you throwing your life away for nothing. Upload complete. Sarah stared at the screen. The words blurred as tears she'd been holding back for 36 hours finally broke free. She'd done it. The truth was out there now, spreading across the internet like wildfire. By dawn, the story would be everywhere. Operation Amber Serpent would be exposed. The men responsible would face justice. Her father's death would be vindicated. She wiped her eyes and keyed the stolen radio. "Romano, this is Reynolds." Silence. Then, "I'm listening. I just uploaded everything. Walsh's notebook, the bank accounts, all of it. It's already at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and about 20 other places. Operation Amber Serpent is over. Even if you kill me, the truth is out." More silence. She could hear Romano breathing, could almost see his face as the implications hit him. "You stupid bitch," he said quietly. "You just started a war. Do you understand that? The people behind Amber Serpent, they don't forgive. They don't forget. They'll destroy everyone you've ever known. Your mother, your friends, everyone. Then they'd better have good lawyers, because by the time the sun comes up, this is going to be the biggest scandal since Iran-Contra. They can come after me all they want. I'm already dead. Not yet, you're not. But you will be. We're 10 minutes out, Sarah. 10 minutes, and then this is over." Sarah looked around the communications station. One door, no windows. Concrete walls that would funnel anyone coming through that door into a perfect kill zone. She could fort up here, make them pay for every foot, take as many of them with her as possible, die like a cornered rat. Or she could do what her father would have done. She gathered her weapons, checked her ammunition one last time, and stepped out of the communications station into the pre-dawn darkness. The sky to the east was just beginning to lighten, that pale gray that comes before the sun. Enough light to see by, enough light to shoot by. Sarah moved to a cluster of boulders 30 meters from the station and set up a defensive position. She had the high ground, clear fields of fire, and the element of surprise. They'd expect her to be inside the building, not outside it. She settled behind the rocks with Kowalski's rifle and waited. The stars faded as dawn approached. In the valley below, she could see the headlamps of approaching vehicles, 2 of them moving fast up the mountain road. Romano had called for transport. Smart. They drive right up to the station, dismount, breach the building, and find it empty. Sarah pressed her eye to the scope and controlled her breathing. Her shoulder throbbed. Her hands shook with exhaustion. But the rifle was steady, held in place by decades of training that had become muscle memory. The vehicles, civilian pickup trucks with mounted machine guns, roared up the final approach, and skidded to a halt 50 meters from the station. Doors flew open. 10 men dismounted in professional formation, weapons up, moving with the fluid coordination of operators who'd trained together for years. Sarah recognized Romano immediately. The shaved head, the powerful build. He was pointing, giving orders, organizing his team for the breach. She put the crosshairs on his chest. Her finger found the trigger and stopped. Kill him now, and the others would scatter. Find cover. She'd get maybe one more shot before they pinpointed her position and returned overwhelming fire. Better to wait. Let them commit. Let them breach the building and realize their mistake. Then she'd have them all in the open. Sarah watched as Romano organized his men. 6 would enter the building. 3 would provide overwatch. Standard assault tactics. Professional. Effective. But they were operating on bad assumptions. The breach team stacked at the door. Romano gave the signal. They flowed inside, weapons sweeping the corners, moving with practiced efficiency. Sarah counted to 5 in her head. Then she heard Romano's voice, amplified by the building's interior. "She's not here. She's not." Sarah fired. The suppressed rifle coughed. The first overwatch man, positioned on the hood of a truck, scanning the ridgeline, jerked backward as the bullet punched through his chest. She worked the bolt. Smooth, fast. The brass cartridge ejected in a golden arc. The second overwatch man was turning, trying to locate the shot, when Sarah's second round caught him in the throat. He went down gurgling. The third overwatch man was smarter. He dove for cover behind the truck's engine block. Sarah put 2 rounds through the truck's sheet metal anyway, hoping for a lucky hit. No cry of pain, so she'd missed. But he was pinned. Romano and his team came boiling out of the building like angry hornets. They'd realized the trap, realized she had them in a killing field. "Scatter! Get to cover!" Romano was screaming. But there wasn't much cover to scatter to. The facility sat on relatively flat ground, by design so the Soviets could defend it easily. The nearest substantial cover was 50 meters away. Sarah fired at a running man. Missed. The range was longer now, targets were moving, and exhaustion was making her hands shake. She worked the bolt, fired again. This time the man went down, hit in the leg. Not a kill shot, but he was out of the fight. 6 left, counting Romano. Return fire started coming her way. Concentrated professional bursts that chipped rock fragments from her position. She ducked, relocated 5 meters to the left, popped up and fired from a new angle. Another man down. 5 left. But they were adapting now. 2 were laying down suppressing fire while the others bounded toward better positions. Romano was coordinating them over radio. They'd flank her position within minutes, get angles on her, overwhelm her with superior numbers. Sarah had to move. She grabbed her gear and low-crawled backward, using the terrain, keeping the boulder field between herself and the shooters. Bullets snapped overhead. One ricocheted off stone inches from her face, spraying her with rock dust. She reached a small depression, maybe 3 feet deep, carved by ancient runoff, and rolled into it. Her shoulder hit the ground wrong and she nearly screamed from the pain. Blood soaked through her shirt. The wound had fully reopened. No time to deal with it. She crawled along the depression, putting distance between herself and her last firing position. 50 meters. 75. At 100 meters, she found another cluster of rocks and set up again. Romano's men were advancing on her old position in a textbook fire and maneuver drill. 2 would shoot while 2 would move, leapfrogging forward, professional, disciplined. Sarah waited until they were committed, all their attention focused on the rocks she just left. Then she shot the trailing man in the back. He went down hard. The others spun, confused, trying to reorient. Where was the shot from? Sarah shot another one before they could react. Center mass. He dropped. 3 left, including Romano. Now they were panicking. The careful discipline was breaking down. One man ran for the trucks, trying to get to the mounted machine gun. Sarah led him, calculated, fired. He stumbled and fell 20 feet from salvation. Two left, Romano and one other. They'd gone to ground behind a low wall of stones, pinned down, unable to advance or retreat without exposing themselves. The sky was growing lighter. Dawn was maybe 10 minutes away. Sarah could see their positions clearly now, see the tops of their heads when they peeked over the wall. She fired at movement. The suppressor on Kowalski's rifle was getting hot, starting to lose effectiveness. Each shot was louder than the last. But it didn't matter anymore. There was no one left to call for backup. "Sarah!" Romano's voice echoed across the rocks. "You've made your point. You've won. The data's uploaded. Just let us go." Sarah said nothing. She was sighting down the scope, waiting for a clear shot. "We were just following orders. We didn't know. We didn't understand what Amber Serpent really was. They told us you were a security risk, that you'd gone rogue." Still, Sarah waited. "Your father would have shown mercy." That made her laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. "My father would have done exactly what I'm doing. He'd have finished the job." She saw Romano's head come up over the wall. Just for a second, just long enough. Sarah fired. The bullet caught him high in the shoulder, spinning him around. Not a kill shot, but he was wounded now, hurt. His rifle clattered away. The last contractor, she didn't even know his name, made a run for it, just broke cover and sprinted down the mountain road, abandoning Romano, abandoning everything. Sarah tracked him through the scope. 700 meters, 800, 900. She let him go. Let him run back to his handlers. Let him tell them what happened here. Let them know that Sarah Reynolds had killed 8 of their best operators and exposed their operation to the world. Let them be afraid. She stood up from behind the rocks, her body screaming with pain and exhaustion, and walked toward Romano's position. He was propped against the stone wall, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. His face was gray with shock. When he saw her approaching, something like fear flickered in his eyes. "You going to shoot me now?" he asked. Sarah stood over him, her rifle pointed at his chest. She should shoot him. He'd tried to kill her. Why not? There are too many witnesses now. Too much evidence. She pulled out the satellite phone Sharif had given her. "I'm calling for a medevac. Marine QRF out of Bagram. They'll be here in 40 minutes. "Why? Why are you saving me?" Sarah looked at the sky. The sun was cresting the eastern peaks now, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. A new day. The first day of truth after years of lies. "Because my father taught me that honor matters more than revenge, that being better matters more than being right." She keyed the phone. "And because someone has to live to tell the story." She made the call, gave the coordinates, explained that she had wounded contractors who needed medical attention and a body count that would require an investigation team. The Marine on the other end of the line sounded skeptical. "Ma'am, can you confirm your identity?" "Lieutenant Sarah Reynolds, SEAL Team 7. Service number 4432791. Authorization code Delta Whiskey 73 November." A pause. Typing. Then, "Lieutenant Reynolds, you're listed as MIA. There was a report that your transport was ambushed 2 days ago. The report was wrong. I'm very much alive. And I have a story that's going to make headlines for the next decade. Ma'am, we're scrambling birds now. Sit tight. Help is coming." Sarah ended the call and sat down heavily on a rock. The adrenaline was draining out of her system, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. She'd been awake for 48 hours, running, fighting, surviving. But she'd made it. Romano was watching her. What happens now? Now, the truth comes out. Operation Amber Serpent gets shut down. The people responsible go to prison. She looked at him. "And I get to bury my father properly, with the truth, not with lies." "You really think they'll let you testify?" "The people behind this, they have connections everywhere. Congress, the Pentagon, the White House." "I know, but I also know that sunlight is the best disinfectant. The story's out there now, spreading. By the time those helicopters arrive, every news organization in the world will have the documents. They can't stop that. They can't silence that. She pulled out her father's K-bar knife and looked at it. The blade big, powerful, loaded with QRF troops ready for a fight. They're coming for you, Romano said. The CIA. Even after this, especially after this, you've made powerful enemies, Sarah. They'll hunt you for the rest of your life. Let them come. Sarah's voice was cold. I'm Jack Reynolds' daughter. I don't scare easy. The helicopters landed in a storm of dust and rotor wash. Marines poured out, weapons ready, securing the perimeter. A lieutenant approached Sarah, his face young and uncertain. Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Chen, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. We're here to extract you. Sarah gestured to Romano and the other wounded contractors. Secure these men. They're prisoners. They need medical attention, but they're also witnesses to a major crime. I need them kept alive and under guard at all times. Chen looked uncertain. Ma'am, my orders were to extract you and assess the situation. I don't have authority to. Lieutenant. Sarah's voice carried the weight of someone who just killed 8 men in 12 hours. These contractors attempted to murder a U.S. military officer to cover up a black-budget operation called Amber Serpent. By dawn, that operation will be front-page news across the world. Right now, these men are the most valuable witnesses on the planet. So you're going to secure them, transport them to Bagram, and place them under guard. Clear? Chen swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Crystal clear. The Marines moved to secure Romano and the other wounded contractors. Medics went to work. Sarah watched it all with a detached numbness of extreme exhaustion. A Marine Corps captain approached, older, maybe 45, with the weathered look of a career infantry officer. His name tape read, Morrison. Sarah stared at him. Morrison? Yes, ma'am. Captain David Morrison. I'm Admiral Morrison's son. The captain's eyes widened. You know my father? He served with my father. Jack Reynolds, Master Chief, SEAL Team 6. Understanding dawned on Morrison's face. Your ghost. Jesus Christ, we thought you were dead. The report said your entire team was killed in a Taliban ambush. The reports were wrong. It wasn't Taliban. It was CIA contractors trying to silence me. She pulled out Walsh's notebook, blood-stained, battered, but intact. This is the evidence. Everything's already uploaded to news organizations and congressional oversight. But I want your father to have the original. He was the only flag officer my dad trusted completely. Morrison took the notebook like it was a live grenade. Ma'am, do you understand what you're holding? What you've done? I've exposed a criminal conspiracy that's been running for 30 years. I've avenged my father's murder, and I've made sure that every weapon sold illegally is documented. Sarah swayed slightly, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Now I'm going to get on one of those helicopters, fly to Bagram, and sleep for about 3 days. Morrison caught her as her knees buckled. Medic, I need a medic here now. Sarah tried to wave him off. I'm fine, just tired. Ma'am, you've been shot. You've lost blood. And unless I'm mistaken, you've been operating without food or water for most of 2 days. He eased her down to sit. You're not fine, but you're alive, and that's what matters. A medic arrived and started working on Sarah's shoulder. The pain, which she'd been blocking out through sheer willpower, came roaring back with a vengeance. This is going to hurt, ma'am, the medic warned. Everything hurts, just do it. As the medic cleaned and dressed the wound, Morrison sat next to her. My father told me about your dad, about Mogadishu. He said Jack Reynolds was the best operator he'd ever served with. Said he was a man who understood that honor mattered more than orders. He was murdered because of that honor. I know, and now you've made sure his death means something. Morrison paused. My father also told me something else. He said that Jack Reynolds had a daughter, and that if she ever joined the military, she'd be even more dangerous than her old man. Looks like he was right. Sarah managed a weak smile. Dangerous is relative. Right now, I'm just trying not to pass out. You can pass out on the helicopter. We'll have you at Bagram in 30 minutes. Full medical, hot food, safe bed. Morrison stood and offered his hand. Come on, Lieutenant. Let's get you home. Sarah let him pull her to her feet. Her legs felt like water, but she managed to stay upright. The helicopter waited, its rotors still turning, ready to carry her away from this mountain where she'd killed so many and exposed so much. As she walked toward it, supported by Morrison on one side and a medic on the other, she looked back at the Soviet communication station. The satellite dish still pointed at the sky, still functional after all these years. A monument to persistence, to the idea that some things were worth maintaining even when empires fell. Her father would have liked that. The helicopter interior was loud and vibrating and beautiful. Sarah strapped into a seat and closed her eyes as they lifted off. Through the open door, she could see the Afghan mountains falling away below. Harsh, beautiful, unforgiving. She'd survived them. Barely, but she'd survived. And more importantly, she'd won. Epilogue. 3 months later. Sarah stood in Arlington National Cemetery, wearing her dress whites, watching as they lowered her father's casket into the ground for the second time. The first burial had been a lie, a ceremony built on classified reports and sanitized testimony, a hero's death in service to his country. This burial was the truth. The Navy had exhumed Jack Reynolds' casket and was reburying him with full honors. The honors he'd actually earned, not the ones manufactured to cover up his murder. The ceremony was attended by every SEAL team commander on the East Coast, by 3 admirals, by 2 senators who'd survived the Amber Serpent scandal, by Admiral Morrison, who'd fought to have Jack Reynolds' record corrected, and by Sarah, who stood at the graveside with tears streaming down her face, finally able to mourn her father properly. The chaplain spoke of courage and sacrifice in duty. The honor guard fired 3 volleys. A bugler played taps. The flag that had covered the casket was folded with precision and presented to Sarah's mother. But the medal presentation was what mattered. Admiral Morrison, now Chief of Naval Operations, stepped forward. Master Chief Jack Reynolds served his country with distinction for 23 years. In 1993, he discovered evidence of a criminal conspiracy within the Central Intelligence Agency. Rather than remain silent, he chose to report these crimes through proper channels. For this act of courage, he was targeted for assassination. The words hung in the air: official acknowledgement, official truth. Master Chief Reynolds was killed not by enemy action, but by agents of his own government. This is a stain on our nation that can never be fully erased. But today we can begin to make amends. Morrison lifted a medal case. Posthumously, Master Chief Jack Reynolds is awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism, for choosing honor over safety, for defending the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic, for teaching his daughter that some truths are worth dying for. He pinned the medal to the flag covering the casket. Sarah's mother wept openly. Sarah stood at attention, her face carved from stone, refusing to break down in public. After the ceremony, after the crowds dispersed, Sarah stood alone at the grave. The sun was setting, painting the white headstones in shades of gold. "I finished it, Dad," she whispered. "Operation Amber Serpent is shut down. 5 CIA officials are in prison. 3 senators resigned. The weapons caches have been recovered, and everyone knows the truth about what happened to you." The grave didn't answer, but Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or at least the absence of the rage that had driven her for so long. Admiral Morrison approached. "Lieutenant Reynolds?" She turned. "Sir?" "Walk with me." They strolled through the cemetery, past endless rows of white stones, heroes and villains, legends and forgotten names, all reduced to the same marble markers. "The Navy wants to give you a medal too," Morrison said. "Navy Cross, for your actions in Afghanistan, for exposing Operation Amber Serpent, for killing 8 enemy combatants while wounded and alone. I don't want a medal, sir. I know, but you're getting one anyway. You've earned it. He paused. The Navy also wants to offer you a new assignment. Instructor position. BUD/S training. Teaching the next generation of SEALs. Sarah considered it. Teaching. Passing on her father's lessons. Making sure the next generation understood that honor mattered more than orders. What about the CIA? She asked. Romano said they'd hunt me forever. 3 of the CIA officials involved in Amber Serpent are in federal prison. 2 committed suicide. The rest have been fired and stripped of clearances. Morrison's smile was grim. The agency has bigger problems right now than revenge. They're fighting for their survival. Congressional oversight has teeth again. And you're a public figure now. Killing you would be complicated. So I'm safe? You're safer than you were. But safe? He shrugged. That's relative. You made powerful enemies, Lieutenant. Some of them are still out there. So you stay sharp. You stay aware. And you trust your instincts the way your father taught you. Sarah nodded. When do I start? At BUD/S? 2 weeks. Get your shoulder healed, get some rest, then report to Coronado. Morrison stopped walking and faced her. Sarah, what you did in Afghanistan, it was extraordinary, but it was also just the beginning. The fight against corruption, against the abuse of power, that fight never ends. Your father understood that. I think you do too. I do, sir. Good, because we need people like you. People who can't be bought, can't be intimidated. People who'll do the right thing, even when it costs everything. He held out his hand. Welcome to the fight, Lieutenant Reynolds. Your father would be proud. Sarah shook his hand. Thank you, sir. I'll do my best to honor his legacy. You already have. Morrison walked away, leaving Sarah alone in the gathering dusk. She stood there for a long moment, looking at the endless rows of graves, thinking about honor and sacrifice and the price of truth. Then she turned and walked toward the cemetery gates, toward her mother, who waited by the car, toward the future she'd earned with blood and pain and her father's lessons. The stars were coming out overhead, the same stars her father had taught her to navigate by, the same stars that had watched over her in the Hindu Kush mountains when she'd been hunted and alone. Constant, unchanging, eternal. Navigate by them, Master Chief Jack Reynolds had once told his daughter. So she would. Sarah Reynolds walked beneath them with her head high and her conscience clear. She'd finished what her father started. She'd exposed the truth, and she'd survived. In the end, that was all anyone could ask. The cemetery gates closed behind her with a soft clang of metal. She didn't look back. The past was buried now, properly, honestly. The future waited ahead, and Sarah Reynolds was ready for it. 2 years later. A young woman stood nervously at the edge of the BUD/S training compound in Coronado. She was small, barely 5'2", with dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her eyes scanned the facility, taking in the obstacle course, the cold Pacific surf, the instructors who would spend the next 6 months trying to break her. An instructor approached. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Reynolds, now 29 years old, with a Navy Cross on her service record and scars on her shoulder that told stories she didn't share. You're here for BUD/S? Sarah asked the young woman. Yes, ma'am, Seaman Rachel Morrison. I'm ready to become a SEAL. Sarah studied her, saw the determination, the fear underneath, the desperate need to prove herself in a world that would doubt her every step. She'd seen that look before, in a mirror. Morrison, Sarah said. Any relation to Admiral Morrison? My grandfather, ma'am. Good man. He knew my father. Sarah's expression softened slightly. BUD/S is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You're going to want to quit. Everyone does. The water's cold. The instructors are merciless. And some of your classmates are going to resent you for being here. Rachel's jaw set. I can handle it, ma'am. I know you can. You want to know how I know? How, ma'am? Sarah smiled, a real smile, warm and encouraging. Because you're here. Because despite every reason to take an easier path, you chose this one. That's the first test. Everything else is just details. She pulled out a small piece of paper and wrote a phone number on it. This is my personal cell. If you make it through, when you make it through, call me. I'll tell you about your first real mission, about what it means to be a SEAL when the bullets are real and the choices are hard. Rachel took the paper like it was sacred. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you graduate. Sarah turned to go, then stopped. One more thing, Morrison. Your grandfather told me something once. He said my father understood that honor matters more than orders. Remember that, because someday you're going to face a choice between what you're told to do and what you know is right. When that day comes, choose right. Always choose right. I will, ma'am. Sarah walked away across the compound, leaving the young woman to face her future. Behind her, she heard the instructor's whistle blow, heard the commanding voice. Class 347, fall in. Welcome to BUD/S. For the next 6 months, your life belongs to us. Sarah didn't look back. She'd trained 14 classes now, helped dozens of young men and women become SEALs, taught them her father's lessons about honor and courage and the cost of truth. Some would make it, some would quit, some would go on to do extraordinary things. And maybe, someday, one of them would face the same choice she had, the same test. Would they pass? Sarah hoped so, because the fight never ended. The battle against corruption, against the abuse of power, against those who thought themselves above the law, that battle was eternal. But as long as there were people willing to stand up for truth, willing to pay the price, willing to finish what needed finishing, there was hope. Sarah Reynolds walked toward her office, toward the mountain of paperwork that waited, toward the mundane reality of being an instructor instead of an operator. But sometimes, on quiet nights, she'd stand on the beach and look at the stars, her father's stars, the ones he'd taught her to navigate by, and she'd remember. Remember the hunt. Remember the truth. Remember the moment everything changed. She'd found her way home. Now she was teaching others to do the same. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.